To discover one cryptid seems like an amazing stroke of luck. To discover 6 seems unbelievable. However, that's exactly what James Audubon did in the early 19th century. 6 cryptid birds, to be exact. James Audubon was a naturalist and painter, and he had a particular interest in different types of birds, especially newly discovered birds. Audubon was a very determined man. In around 1820, when he was aged about 35, he said he would paint every single bird that exists in North America. Instead of using oil painting, which at the time was the preferred medium of painting animals, he favoured instead watercolour and pastel crayons. He also sometimes used pencil and charcoal to draw them as well. Many of the birds he drew would be drawn from stuffed specimens, so they could be more lifelike. Over the course of his book, The Birds of America, which he published from 1827 to 1838, he drew by hand over 400 different types of birds. In the books he depicts now extinct animals as well, such as the Carolina parakeet, the passenger pigeon, which went extinct in the early 1900s, the Labrador duck, the great auk, which is another popular cryptozoology topic, the heath hen, and also the ivory-billed woodpecker and Bachman's warbler. However, in this video we're going to be looking at the 6 cryptid birds that we cannot identify, and are only identified from his drawings. Our first bird wasn't actually discovered by Audubon. It was first seen by a man called Alexander Wilson, who collected a specimen in May of 1811, and he first described it in his book American Ornithology Volume 5, published in 1812. It was described as a medium-sized warbler with distinct blue and green plumage, and had a very nice song. James Audubon went searching for this warbler in 1829, and he discovered the area where it was first found by Wilson in 1811. However, he never observed the bird himself. The specimen, or specimens, are not known to exist now. In 1839, Audubon stated that he never actually saw the species in life, and that his own illustration was actually based on an earlier illustration by a man called Robert Havell Jr. This 1812 drawing by Wilson shows the hemlock warbler on the left and the blue mountain warbler on the right. This is the earliest illustration we have of the alleged animal. Here's a 1941 specimen of a female black-throated green warbler. This has been suggested to be the likely true identity of the blue mountain warbler, since they are found in similar areas and share a lot of similarities. The blue mountain warbler might have been a hybrid or perhaps an adolescent. However, the distinctions don't seem to me personally to warrant it being a new species, if it ever did exist. To further back up this point, Wilson never identified a female black-throated green warbler, so it seems the likely identity. Our next mysterious bird is Cuvier's kinglet. Now, unlike what the name suggests, this one was actually first shot by Audubon in June 8th of 1812. He shot the bird on his father-in-law's plantation in Pennsylvania. Initially he thought it was a ruby-crowned kinglet, but after shooting and picking it up he realised that it looked radically different. He drew the mysterious bird and kept the drawing for nearly 20 years before he published it in 1831. To quote Audubon, "I have named this pretty and rare species after Baron Cuvier, not merely by way of acknowledgement for the kind attentions which I have received at the hands of that deservedly celebrated naturalist, but more as a homage due by every student of nature to one at present unrivalled in the knowledge of general zoology." The bird's specimen was confirmed to still be in existence in 1829, and most likely was still kept by Audubon in 1831 when he published his book. However, the specimen is now lost and we don't really know what the bird was. The illustration bears some resemblance to known kinglets or smaller warblers, which perhaps means it might have been a misidentified juvenile or regional variation of the bird. The small-headed flycatcher was another bird found by Wilson in the early 1800s. It was said to be either found in 1810 or 1812 or perhaps earlier. Now, Audubon was a bit suspicious of this one, and he thought that Wilson had made an error in how it was presented. Nevertheless, he did include it in his book. This first drawing is done by Wilson in about 1812. The next drawing was done by Audubon. You can see it's meant to be the same animal, although the position of the bird is different in both paintings. To this day, nobody knows what the identity of the bird was, and it has never been seen since. Perhaps it was misidentified, or perhaps it was indeed a new species of bird. Ooh. Hello, Donut. Now, our next bird is perhaps the most famous one. It's called the Washington Eagle, and it was first sighted in February 1814 by Audubon himself. This bird proved to be Audubon's most controversial. In his 1828 volume of the Birds of America, he claimed that his last sighting of the bird was on the 15th of November, 1821. However, this doesn't particularly check out geographically. He wasn't actually at the mouth of the Ohio River where he claims he found the bird, first of all, in 1821. But he was there in November 1820, so he might have got the dates a bit muddled up. The bird was said to be very big, with a wingspan of 10 feet and 2 inches long. The validity of the species has been questioned since at least the 1870s, and the consensus with modern zoologists is that it's either a hoax, a mistaken identity, or indeed a new species. Audubon allegedly first sighted the Washington eagle along the Mississippi River whilst he was on a trading trip. Now, it's important to note here that Audubon horrifically bought and sold enslaved people, and a lot of the establishments named after Audubon nowadays have rightfully been renamed. Getting back to the Washington eagle, the captain of the ship pointed out that it was a very rare bird, although it was sometimes seen. His second alleged encounter happened sometime between 1817 and 1818. This time he was along the Green River in Kentucky, so a bit far from the Mississippi River. He saw several alleged Washington eagles nesting on a high cliff. His companions said the birds looked like bald eagles, but Audubon denied this, saying that bald eagles only nested in trees, not on cliffs. Most mysteriously, Audubon claimed to in 1819 have shot and killed a Washington eagle that was feeding on a dead horse. This is mysterious because in an 1820 diary entry written by Audubon himself, he claims that he's never actually managed to collect a specimen of the Washington eagle. So either he got the year muddled up, or maybe he was lying. Researcher Matthew Haley, who dug through a lot of Audubon's actual field journals, found that the timeline doesn't really hold up. Haley argues that the whole account, including the killing of a specimen, may have been at least partly fabricated to try and build a good story. The name of the bird as well, the Washington eagle named after George Washington, may have been an attempt by Audubon to try and gain himself more fame. The three main theories to the identity of the Washington eagle is firstly that it was an invention, and that the actual picture drawn by Audubon was plagiarised from a picture of a golden eagle from the early 1800s book Rees's Cyclopedia. Secondly, if we are to believe Audubon, it may have been a juvenile species of another type of eagle, or perhaps a subspecies of bald eagle. And of course, the most mysterious is that it was an actual species and is now extinct, and we have no remains of it. I think it's a bit suspicious because if Audubon claimed to have shot one and have handled many specimens, why didn't he have the specimen scientifically described? It doesn't really add up to me. Whatever the case, the Washington eagle is by far the most famous of Audubon's cryptid birds. Our next bird is the Carbonated Warbler. Now, this was allegedly collected by Audubon twice, and he first described it in 1831. It was included in his 1832 edition of the Birds of America. This has led some researchers to claim that the Carbonated Warbler wasn't discovered until 1832. However, the 1831 writings of Audubon contradict this. According to Audubon's notes and the illustration of the birds, the Carbonated Warbler possessed a distinctive plumage marked by a unique combination of yellow, brown, white and black. Its appearance didn't match any known warbler species of North America at the time or since, leading some zoologists to speculate that it may have been a now extinct type of bird. Again, I think it's interesting that Audubon allegedly shot and preserved two specimens, but he never had them scientifically described and nobody else seemed to observe them. Audubon did describe this bird in Birds of America 1832. However, he didn't feature it very prominently, so I think that if it did exist, it shows that Audubon wasn't very interested in this bird. Like with Audubon's other birds, the bird may have been a variant or hybrid of a known species. It possibly had unique plumage due to the environmental or genetic factors and might not actually count as a different species if it did really exist. Our last bird is Townsend's finch, and I think this is one of the most mysterious on the list besides, of course, the Washington eagle, because this one was actually relatively scientifically described. Like with a couple of other cryptid birds on this list, this bird wasn't actually discovered by Audubon. The first account of Townsend's finch was by zoologist John Kirk on May the 11th, 1833, who found the specimen in what is now Chester County in southeastern Pennsylvania. John Kirk was a colleague of John James Audubon, and so Audubon illustrated the bird in his 1833 edition of the Birds of America. It shone with a sparrow-like body and had a white throat and grey chest, which was unlike any other birds in the area. The identity of Townsend's finch, like the other cryptid birds allegedly discovered by Audubon, was controversial in being declared a new species. One modern researcher has theorised that Townsend's finch might have been a misidentified DICKCISSEL. Most interestingly, however, in September 2014, Canadian birdwatcher Carl Blaney spotted a bird he couldn't identify in Prince Edward Point National Wildlife Area, which is just off Lake Ontario. He took 6 photographs of the animal before it managed to fly away. The bird somewhat matched the appearance of Audubon's Townsend finch. It had a sparrow-like body, white throat and grey plumage. So if this bird, Townsend's finch, was really a new species, these photographs could represent some evidence of it. I hope you all enjoyed watching this video, and please leave a like and subscribe if you did. And now that it's the summer holiday and I have a bit of time off work, I can hopefully post more regularly.